Exposed. Haunted neighbors from hell, revealing sinister secrets and terrifying truths. Jenna's heart raced as dusk fell in Maplewood, the shadows stretching long across her lawn. The Whitakers' laughter drifted over, a comforting sound that cracked suddenly with unsettling thuds from their backyard. Unease crept into her mind, teeth gritting with anxiety. She could barely squash the fear rising in her throat. As she glanced out her window, her breath caught. It was supposed to be a postcard-perfect suburb, but that evening it felt more like the set of a horror film. As she made dinner for her kids, an odd rhythm from next door punctuated the familiar sounds of life. Children playing, distant cars rolling by. But stillness followed the thuds, that unnerving silence lingering too long. It draped like a heavy fog, seeping into her home. Hazel, her youngest, tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, what's that noise?" Jenna forced a smile, but inside her stomach knotted. The Whitakers were everything she'd ever wanted. A picture-perfect family with a pristine lawn and polished smiles. Or so she thought. Over the past few weeks, whispers about a missing child tickled the edges of her ears. She dismissed it. Until now. The world around her twisted into an eerie haze. The mailboxes that proudly stood with flags flying, now whispered of dread. She felt the tightening grip of suspicion pooling in her chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every night after her shifts at the diner, street lamps flickered like watchful eyes. Jenna started finding strange symbols etched into the Whitakers' garden. A crude child's drawing, a spiraling symbol that twisted her gut. Each line looked like a warning, as if something watched from the shadows. The bright porch lights turned ominous, anchoring her in a growing horror. Children in the neighborhood chattered softly, echoing ghostly whispers that danced through Jenna's dream. One night, as she brushed Hazel's hair, the little girl's words sent shivers down her spine. "Mommy, they want me." Heart pounding like a drum, Jenna fought to keep her composure. What was happening to her neighborhood? Recycling rumors turned toxic, embedding fear deeper and stranger. It escalated. Jenna started her own investigation, piecing together unsettling connections that rippled through Maplewood. Old, unsolved crimes that felt more like dark myths. Every window creaked with stories, and every shadow loomed larger. She felt every heartbeat against her ribs, a refueling fire of determination pushed by terror. Swallowing her fear, she approached the Whitakers one fateful evening. Knocking on their door felt like leaning over a precipice. Silence swallowed her, deep, terrifying, the kind that vibrated. Just as doubt started to seep in, she sensed it. Something brushed past her, a sensation of cold dread. A shadow loomed just beyond reach, staring back. She recognized it like a lurking predator. Barely able to breathe, she steadied herself against the door. And then, the low, chilling whisper echoed through the darkness, pervading her skin. "You shouldn't have come here." Jenna stumbled back, heart racing. The whisper peeled away layers of her bravado, exposing raw fear beneath. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but her feet felt glued to the porch. A creaking sound broke the stillness, and the door swung open slowly. Mrs. Whitaker stood there, her expression unsettlingly calm, the light behind her casting grotesque shadows across her face. "Can I help you, Jenna?" The question felt hollow, echoing hollowly in the heavy air. Jenna swallowed hard. I wanted to check on you, see if everything's okay." Her voice faltered, barely hanging onto its composure. "Oh, everything's just fine." Mrs. Whitaker's smile widened, revealing too much teeth. A flicker of something dark passed her eyes, and Jenna's pulse quickened. "The noise, just a little project." "Project?" The word felt foreign, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Jenna's mind raced. What kind of project? Garden renovations, she said, her tone light, but something flickered in her gaze, a brief flash of malice. Would you like to come in? We have freshly baked cookies. Her voice dripped with a strange sweetness, but Jenna could see the crumbling edges beneath, like a facade hiding decay. No, that's okay. Jenna forced herself to find her voice. I, have to get back to the kids. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but it was true. She needed to get away from this woman. Suit yourself. There was a finality in Mrs. Whitaker's tone as she closed the door slowly, the handle clicking shut like a coffin ceiling. Jenna rushed back to her house, the unease coiling tighter in her stomach. She peeked through her curtains, watching the Whitakers' home. Shadows flitted behind their living room window, ominous shapes twisting, shaping into something she couldn't quite recognize. Was it just her imagination? Or was there something dark brewing with the Whitakers? Moments turned into minutes as the shadows danced, and Jenna's pulse surged with dread. Mommy, can we go outside? Hazel's soft voice broke through her thoughts. She turned and forced a smile, hiding her rising panic. Not right now, sweetheart. Let's stay inside for a bit. Night settled thick outside, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Jenna grabbed her phone, scrolling through the internet for news of the missing child. The stories morphed into something haunting. Vanished children, shadows of forgotten souls. Were the Whitakers just fantastic at hiding their dark secrets? Was their picture-perfect life a mask for something devilish? A sudden crash shattered the silence, rattling her. Jenna jumped, heart leaping into her throat. She dashed to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peek outside. There was chaos across the Whitakers' yard. Several figures moved about under the moonlight, but hidden in the darkness their faces were obscured. Fear clawed at her insides, making her dizzy. She watched as they dragged something heavy toward the shadowy shed. Not a child, but a large, tarped bundle. The moonlight caught the edge for a fleeting moment, revealing a flash of crimson. What are they doing? She whispered, the sickness pooling in her stomach. She was certain now something was terribly wrong. Just then, the front door of the Whitakers' house flung open again, and Mr. Whitaker stepped out with an unsettling calmness that chilled Jenna to the bone. His eyes scanned the neighborhood, and for a brief moment, they locked onto hers. Panic surged as she realized her presence had not gone unnoticed. She let go of the curtain just in time to avoid detection, holding her breath, eyes wide with terror. Then her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, startling her. A message flashed on the screen. Come to the shed. We know what you saw. Jenna's heart sank. Who sent that? And worse, were they a friend or foe? She backed away from the window, her heart pounding louder than ever. This was escalating dangerously fast. And just like that, Jenna was caught in a decision that would change everything. Confront the darkness or flee into the night. But one truth was clear. The Whitakers held secrets that clawed at their facade of normalcy. In Maplewood, safety wasn't as simple as it once seemed. What awaited her in the shed? Curiosity battled fear in her mind as uncertainty thickened the air. She took a breath, summoning courage from deep within, its source uncertain. What would she uncover if she went? Would the truth reveal salvation or doom? The night stretched ahead like an ominous path twisting into darkness. She stepped back toward the kitchen, determination sparking against the gnawing dread. One thing she knew for sure. She was going to find out what lay in the shadows, and whether she could survive it. As her resolve strengthened, she felt the chill of eyes on her again, watching from the dark. Someone was waiting, and the next move would be hers. But was she ready for what waited in the depths? Jenna took a deep breath, edges of fear sharpening into focus. The message had sent a jolt through her body, tingling and cold. There were eyes out there, lurking, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching her every move. The room felt stifling, as if the walls were closing in, pressing her into a corner. She leaned against the counter, her heart racing, weighing her options. Every fiber of her being screamed for escape. Yet curiosity twisted inside her, urging her to uncover whatever horror was at the Whitakers' shed. What did they know? What had she seen? The echo of that crimson flash surged in her mind as if the color itself thrummed with warning. The thumping of her heart grew loud and disruptive, a drumbeat against the mounting silence. Hazel's laughter echoed faintly from another room, blissfully unaware, and that made Jenna's skin prickle. She could either keep her daughter safe or face whatever darkness lurked outside. "Mommy!" Hazel's voice came again, lighter now, drawing Jenna from her reverie. Jenna forced a smile, dipping her head into the beam of light shining from the kitchen. "I'm just thinking, sweet girl. Why don't you color for a bit? Mommy will be right back." She prayed her attempt at normalcy didn't betray underlying nerves. Hazel nodded and scampered off, leaving Jenna in the stillness, droplets of sweat trickling down her spine. The exterior night deepened, casting shadows that danced ominously at the periphery of her vision. Jenna's feet began moving almost against her will toward the door, each step heavy, but determination propelled her forward. As she creaked open the door, the chill of the night air washed over her, sharp with the scent of earth and fear. Anxiety prickled at her skin as she stepped into the dark yard. The moon hung high, a ghostly eye offering partial illumination as she navigated the overgrown lawn, the crunch of twigs echoing with each cautious step. The shed loomed before her, a squat silhouette against the moonlight, brimming with dark possibilities. Shadows flickered inside and cold fear gripped her as she reached for the handle. Her knuckles brushed against the splintered wood, and she hesitated. What if they were waiting? What if the message was a trap? But then she recalled that flash of crimson. She thought of the missing children, the pervasive rumors that had turned Maplewood's quiet streets into a playground for whispers. There was darkness here, and she could either shine a light on it or let it engulf her. In her gut, she felt a primal force urging her to push through. With a shaking breath, Jenna swung the door open, a rusty groan cutting through the stillness. The door revealed an interior draped in shadows. A scattered assortment of tools hung from the walls, and the scent of damp earth stung her nostrils. In the corner, a tarp sat ominously, bulging as though something awful lay just beneath its cover. "Hello?" Her voice faltered against the oppressive darkness, echoing like a ghost through the shed. The air still, expectant. She felt more than heard the pulse of secrets waiting to be unveiled. Slowly, almost reverently, Jenna stepped closer. Her heart thudded in her chest as she reached for the edge of the tarp, fingers trembling with dread and anticipation. Just as she was about to pull it back, she heard it. A rustling from the far side of the shed. "Who's there?" Her voice broke, fear blossoming like weeds, thick and choking. Silence hung in the air, thick enough to cut. The tension twisted, stretching taut like a wire ready to snap. Jenna took a cautious step back, about to bolt when a voice pierced the stillness, a whisper, low and laced with menace. "Welcome to the truth." The words slithered through the air, wrapping around her like a noose tightening with every heartbeat. Suddenly, the lights outside flickered as if the world conspired against her, plunging her into darkness. Heart pounding, she faced the unknown, sensing movement in the shadows beyond her sight. Were they the hunters, or the hunted? Jenna's breath quickened, and the urge to flee burned within her, but the chilling whisper still echoing in her mind kept her rooted in place. "What is this truth?" she asked, voice quaking with uncertainty and challenge, daring the dark to respond. What kind of revelations awaited her in this hellish darkness? Would she emerge with knowledge, or was she already too late? The air thickened with anticipation, the line between sanity and terror blurring as something stirred in the darkness. And then, the flickering lights went completely out. Jenna was left in the black, pulse pounding, trapped in a moment where the unseen loomed closer, ready to strike. What awaited in this darkness? Jenna's heart hammered in the pitch black, a war drum in her chest. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to stave off the terror gnawing at the edges of her mind. The suffocating silence felt alive, pressing in on her from all sides, coiling around her throat. There was something in the darkness, something that breathed and waited. "Mom!" Hazel's innocent voice broke through, but it felt miles away, distorted and full of dread. Jenna remembered her daughter, her sweet girl left in the brightly lit kitchen, blissfully unaware of the horrors creeping into their lives. Hazel, she cried, voice trembling, desperation clawing at her throat. She needed to make it back. But the darkness mocked her, swallowing her words and rendering her alone once more. With a faltering breath, Jenna stepped further into the shed, reaching her hand out for anything solid. A sudden cold gust swept through, sending chills coursing down her spine, and she felt the hairs on her arms stand at attention. Something was very wrong. "Show yourself," she shouted, though the bravado crumbled beneath the weight of fear. A whisper brushed past her ears, indistinct but filled with malice. She felt it tug at her clothes, a phantom hand urging her to turn, to look back at whatever had slithered into the shadows. A flicker of light emerged, brief and fleeting, casting long, twisted shapes across the walls. Jenna's gut twisted as she caught sight of the tarp. It shifted slightly, as if something beneath stirred. She darted toward it, driven by a mix of dread and an almost reckless curiosity. What lay beneath? With trembling fingers, she grasped the edge of the tarp and pulled it back, heart constricting in her chest. The dim light revealed blood-stained tools scattered like broken dreams, hammers, knives, twisted metal glimmering ominously. A guttural sound erupted from beyond, deep and hungry. The air vibrated with a sense of impending danger, and Jenna's instincts kicked into overdrive. Suddenly, a flash of light flickered again, illuminating a figure huddled in the corner. She gasped, stumbling back as the image of a child emerged. A boy, pale as moonlight, wide eyes locked onto hers. "Help!" he whimpered, voice raw and pitiful, sending waves of horror cascading through Jenna. He looked like he had been there for ages, trapped in a hell she couldn't begin to understand. "Where are your parents?" she asked, though it was clear they were not coming. His gaze shifted behind her, terror reflected in his expression. "Run!" he croaked, and before Jenna could react, something lunged from the shadows. The darkness erupted into chaos, spilling forth figures draped in tattered clothing, their eyes void of sanity, faces twisted into gory masks of despair. They advanced, drawn by the sound, fueled by hunger. Jenna's heart raced, primal instinct flooding her senses. She tore her gaze from the boy and bolted, adrenaline surging through her veins. Each panicked step felt like a gamble, whether to face the horrors within or find her daughter, her only lifeline to the fading world of safety. "Hazel!" she screamed as she collided against the doorframe, throwing it open into the night. The light from the kitchen flooded over her, stark and blinding, illuminating shadows that drifted just outside the threshold. Watchers still lurking, waiting. "Mommy!" Hazel's small voice broke through, but Jenna felt the chill of unknowing settle over her. She dashed for the kitchen, heart pounding like a hammer, terrified of what she had left behind. The joy on her daughter's face felt far too misplaced in their fragile world. Yet the shadows danced outside, whispering and beckoning with promises of terror destined to be unearthed. "Mommy, where were you?" Hazel asked, her innocence sharp against the grim backdrop. Jenna swallowed, shaking, knowing that every moment seemed to tick away their safety. Let's get inside," she managed, panic coursing through her. She grabbed Hazel tightly, feeling the pulse of her daughter's heart against her own. As they stepped back inside, shadows flitted just beyond the breaking dawn, almost mocking in how they swirled against the light. But then, a thud echoed outside, the unmistakable sound of something heavy crashing to the ground, closer than before. "What was that?" Hazel whispered, clutching Jenna's arm. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. It didn't matter who or what was watching, they were coming. They could feel the weight of darkness creeping ever closer, the veil of safety tearing as new horrors approached. "What if they're not what they seem?" Jenna whispered to herself, dread settling deep within. She just hoped the truth wouldn't be too terrible to bear. And then came the soft tapping at the window, a slow, rhythmic pattern that turned her blood to ice. Who was out there? What did they want? As she stared into the growing light, there was only one question burning in her mind. How far were they willing to go to protect the ones they loved? Jenna's heart raced, a whirlwind of fear and protection as the tapping at the window grew louder. It sounded almost like a plea. She felt a strange pull, an urge to look closer. "Mommy," Hazel whimpered, gripping her tighter, the innocence in her voice cutting through Jenna's panic like a blade. Darkness loomed beyond the glass, an entity straining to breach the barrier of light. A shadow flickered, and Jenna's breath turned shallow. Her instincts screamed at her to lock the doors, to retreat deeper into the house, but what if the boy was still out there, the one who had warned her? The tapping ceased, and in the eerie silence she caught the faint sound of ragged breathing, heavy and raspy. Jenna steadied herself. Whatever was out there, it was waiting, just beyond the threshold, mocking her rising anxiety. "Stay here," she whispered, though Hazel's fear saturated the space between them, her knuckles blanching against Jenna's arm. "Mom, no! Don't go!" Jenna crouched down. Their eyes met, and in Hazel's wide, frightened gaze she saw a mirror of her own terror. But deep down, a resolve sparked. She took a breath, heart pounding as she approached the window. Each step was a fight against the instinct to flee. Slowly she pulled back the curtain, and the morning light flooded in, illuminating the world outside, yet hiding the truth within its glow. Nothing was there. Only an empty porch, littered with scattered leaves, empty tools glinting under a hesitant sun. But the unease clawed at her. "Look away," the boy's voice echoed in her mind, battling against the strange stillness of the morning. She hesitated, pushing the curtain aside. A crack in the calm began to splinter her composure. Then the sound returned, a child's giggle. It was sweet, light, but it twisted into something sinister as it echoed around the house. A shiver ripped through her, pooling dread in her stomach. "Mom?" Hazel said. Her voice trembled, and Jenna turned back to her daughter. Her sweet girl wrapped in safety, even that felt tenuous now. With deliberate steps, Jenna backed away from the window. "Let's go to the living room. We'll be safe there." She guided Hazel, but a sudden crash jolted them both, shaking the walls, as if something large had been thrown against the side of their home. Fear engulfed Jenna. "Stay close!" They rushed toward the living room, the sunlight fracturing into shadows with every corner they turned. She felt eyes watching, unseen, yet always present. The air thickened with anxiety, each breath a reminder that their sanctuary felt hollow. They huddled behind the couch, hearts beating in sync as they strained to listen. Silence hung precariously above them, broken only by the distant echoes of their own rapid breaths. Then, from the depths of the house came a slow creaking, like floorboards surrendering to weight. Jenna caught Hazel looking wide-eyed toward the hallway. "It's okay," Jenna murmured, though her voice dipped into doubt. The boy's warning flashed in her mind. "Run! What if it's someone?" Hazel whispered, innocence clashing with the darkening atmosphere. Venomous thoughts twisted through Jenna's mind. What if it was? What if it was someone she recognized? A neighbor? Had they always been hiding this kind of evil behind their wallpaper smiles? And just then, footsteps echoed down the hall. Slow, deliberate, each one a cold summoning of dread. Shadows, real and menacing now, began to crawl along the walls toward them. "Mom!" Hazel cried, panic sparking between them like lightning. "Shh, honey, we need to be quiet." But Jenna felt the shadow closing in, a predator lurking in the corners, waiting for the slightest tremor of betrayal. "What if they want to see us?" Hazel asked, her voice a trembling whisper. "They don't want to see us, sweetheart," Jenna replied, desperation coating her words. But deep down, she felt the chilling truth. They were not safe. Not at all. The whispers began again, calling, urging her to look, to understand what lay beyond the veil. And then the footsteps stopped. Just outside the door, something scratched, clawing against the wood, a low murmuring echoing like a chant. The door trembled. What would she find on the other side? An enemy, or something far worse? The air was thick with terror, and Jenna realized she had a choice to make. Would time grant her the strength to protect her daughter, or would this be the moment they wished they had run? The door rattled. One last throaty whisper swept through, chilling her to the bone. "Let us in." And knocking started again, fierce and unrelenting. What were they? What did they want? Jenna's heart raced as she gripped Hazel tighter, the choice looming in front of her like a shadow ready to consume them both. How could she face what lay outside, knowing it could come crashing through at any moment? What lay beyond the door was no longer just a matter of survival. It was a question of who they really were beneath the surface. And the truth, Jenna feared, might just tear apart everything she held dear. The knocking grew more frantic, each thud feeling like an urgent heartbeat echoing through Jenna's chest. She felt paralyzed, torn between the urge to flee and the instinct to protect. Was it really a plea for help? Or a sinister invitation to surrender? "Mom," Hazel's voice cracked, teetering on the edge of panic, and Jenna tightened her hold just a little more. "Please don't let them in." "Shh," Jenna whispered again, her eyes darting to the door, heart pounding so loud she feared the intruders might hear it. Each second felt like a lifetime, stretching the tension thin. She could feel the oppressive weight of unseen eyes, guardians of the terror lurking just beyond the door. The scratching intensified, claws or fingers, she couldn't know. But this wasn't an animal. No beast would scratch with such purpose. Was it a child, a group of them, or something more sinister hiding within innocent play? Then came the voice, soft, unsettling. "Mommy, let us in. It's cold out here." The sweetness clawed at Jenna's gut, twisting whatever rational thought remained inside her. "Don't move, Hazel." Almost instinctively, Jenna turned slightly, peeking just over the back of the couch where they'd huddled. The door appeared untouched, yet something felt off. Too still, too deceptively calm. And then the knocking stopped, replaced by a low, mocking laughter. It rippled through the air, encircling them like a noose. Jenna's breath clung to her throat, suffocating her. "What do you want?" she called out, her voice trembling but defiant. "Just to play." Play. The word hung there, heavy with menace. Jenna's mind raced, recalling the boy's warning. Was the entity external or merely a reflection of what no longer felt safe in her home? "Stay quiet," she hissed to Hazel, who pressed against her, eyes wide with terror. For a moment silence swallowed them both, the weight of uncertainty pressing down like a stone. And then, as if on cue, the lights flickered. The living room plunged into darkness, then flickered back. Only now the shadows seemed thicker. Each pulse of light painted the figures lurking just out of sight, half-formed shapes lurking at the edges of her vision. A shriek sliced through the air, a girl's voice, young and raw with fear. "Let me in!" "No!" Jenna screamed, instinct roaring to life. She shot up and yanked Hazel to her feet. "We have to get out of here!" They dashed down the hallway, hearts racing, fingers intertwined as they burst into the kitchen, a place that once felt safe but now felt like a crime scene. The back door stood ajar, a sinister beckoning just waiting for them to tumble into whatever lay beyond. "Mom," Hazel whimpered, "where do we go?" Jenna scanned the room frantically. They had no plan. "We need to get to the car." She led Hazel across the cold tile floor, every step amplified with the cadence of terror. The scratching at the door had transformed into unearthly wailing, a choir of pain echoing through the air. She shivered involuntarily. "Mom, the windows!" Hazel pointed, eyes wide with fright. The glass trembled, shards rattling dangerously. Thin, pale fingers pushed against the frame, gliding swiftly like oil on the surface of water. Panic surged. Jenna knew they didn't have much time. She yanked Hazel by the hand, rushing toward the kitchen door. It creaked open as if taunting them, a dark mouth waiting to devour. "Go!" They burst outside into the daylight, gasping for freedom. The yard was eerily still, but the house loomed behind them like a predator, the windows seeming to watch, to judge. "Mommy, I don't want to be here." Hazel's voice trembled as she squeezed Jenna's hand tighter. Jenna turned to reassure her, but even in broad daylight there was a shadow. Not just from the trees, but something lurking behind her. "Run!" They bolted for the car, but just as Jenna grasped the handle, she felt a chill skitter down her spine. Across the street, a gathering of children stood, silent and unmoving, eyes dark and empty, faces twisted with an unsettling smirk. Something deep inside Jenna screamed that whatever innocence they might have had was long gone. She fumbled for the key, heart racing, breath catching in her throat as the children's voices merged into a cacophony. "Join us! Come play with us! We're waiting!" Jenna's heart plummeted. "We have to go, now!" But as Hazel screamed behind her, Jenna could feel the shadows pulling her back, clawing at her sanity and her resolve. The door to their house creaked one last time, revealing a flicker of movement inside. What had she unleashed? What were they really? In that instant, as the children's haunting laughter crescendoed, Jenna realized with a shuddering horror, maybe they were the least of her concerns. "Mom!" Hazel cried. And there, rising from the depths of the trapdoor under the porch, was something darker, whispering promises of twisted games and terrifying truths. "Mommy! Look behind you!" Jenna's skin prickled with fear as she turned slowly, realizing the truth that might have been better left ungrasped. Would it be too late to escape now that the game had officially begun? Jenna's breath caught in her throat as she turned, terror wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. The shadows that had once seemed merely a trick of the light now pulsed with life, forming a grotesque figure emerging from the trapdoor. It was tall, its limbs unnaturally long, fingers stretching like spider legs, each digit tipped with claws that glistened with a dark, viscous fluid. Its face was a smear of twisted features, eyes wide and hollow, reflecting nothing but blackness. A chilling smile brought silence to the chaos surrounding them, the playground of laughter replaced by a thick, suffocating air of dread. "Mommy, come play," it whispered, a voice that seemed to echo from nowhere, yet reverberated through Jenna's very bones. Hazel whimpered, instinctively inching closer to her mother. "What is it?" she cried, her small voice barely above a whisper. There was fear, yes, but also the lure of curiosity. Jenna could see her daughter barely holding on to the side of sanity. The pull of the unknown was strong, especially for a child unburdened by the weight of true horror. "Get in the car!" Jenna shouted, tearing her gaze from the creature. They needed to move now, or they wouldn't get a chance at all. But as she turned back toward the driveway, dread rooted her in place. The children across the street hadn't moved. They were still there. A twisted array of innocence turned malevolent, their smiles broadening as the monster rose. "Join us!" they chanted in unison, their voices sickly sweet, yet laced with something dark and terrifying. "No, no." Jenna shook her head, willing herself to back away, but the ground felt like quicksand beneath her feet. She glanced back at Hazel, who was frozen in fear, eyes darting between the looming figure and the children. Then the thing from the trapdoor laughed, a horrible, dissonant sound that vibrated through Jenna's bones. "Your turn, Mommy." Time split in half, seconds turning into decades as Jenna grappled with the suffocating fear. What was pulling her in? Was it the promises of play, or was it the emptiness she felt creeping up her spine? "Run, Hazel!" she finally screamed, adrenaline surging through her veins like fire. "Get to the car!" Jenna pushed her daughter toward the vehicle, the hope of safety flickering in the distance like a mirage. But the ground seemed to warp under their feet. She squeezed Hazel's hand, praying they could make it before the shadows swallowed them whole. As they ran, the laughter built again, echoing off the walls of the house, bouncing around their ears until it drowned out everything else. Behind them, she felt the cold breath of the thing upon her neck, hot and rotten, as if it were savoring their fear. "Faster," Jenna urged, feeling her legs grow heavier with each stride. The car was so close, yet each step felt like it was stretching her time, drawing her closer to whatever awaited behind. Hazel stumbled, gasping, and Jenna pulled her up, feeling the pull of the darkness behind them like a tide threatening to consume them. Just as they reached the car, a shadow flickered across the rearview mirror, dark and quick. "You're never leaving," the creature shrieked, something sharp slicing through the air, and Jenna knew in that moment she had to make a choice. Turning back, she faced the darkness full on. "You want to play? Fine," she yelled, "but let my daughter go." The laughter stopped. Silence enveloped the air, a void swallowing all sound. "Mom," Hazel whispered, clutching at her mother's arm. No! Jenna yelled at the shadows, hands balled into fists. You want me? Then take me! At her defiance, the darkness surged forward, reclaiming its space as the children's voices faded into a whisper. It was no longer just a game. It was a battle of wills, a terrifying dance on the edge of light and shadow. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the car, illuminating the yard like the sun. In that moment of truth, Jenna felt a warmth, a reminder of the safety that could exist if only they made it through. But the shadows writhed, howling in anger as they recoiled from the light. "Mom, get in!" Hazel screamed, her voice breaking through the chaos. A heartbeat, and then they were in the car, slamming the doors shut. Jenna turned the key, praying for the engine to roar to life. But before the roar came a soft sound just outside, the soft patter of tiny feet, the chorus of children chanting in a sing-song voice. "Let's play forever." The engine stalled, sputtering and dying, leaving them in harrowing silence once more. "Mommy." Hazel's voice trembled, tears pooling in her eyes as the shadows gathered at the edges like a living nightmare. Jenna felt cold sweat trickle down her back. "Hold on tight," she whispered, clutching her daughter's hand as dread washed over her. The vehicle jerked unexpectedly, the door handles rattling violently as if unseen hands were trying to pull them out into the night. And in that moment of crushing fear, Jenna knew. The game wasn't over yet. "Mommy, what if they come in? What if I can't keep you safe?" Jenna replied, her heart racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. But then came a chilling realization. What if the darkness wanted more than just them? What if, in this struggle, they had to confront a truth far worse than they could imagine? Outside, the chanting grew louder, intensifying. A ghastly reminder that whatever had been awakened would not let them go that easily. "Mom, look!" Hazel cried, pointing to the shadows swirling around the car. And before Jenna could react, something cracked across the windshield. A single sinister crack snaking its way across the glass. As she glanced up, dread clawed at her mind. What had they truly invited into their lives? The children were gone, but the laughter echoed still. An invitation or a warning? Their escape was far from over. The crack spiderwebbed across the windshield, surreal and quick as if birthed from the very shadows that pursued them. Jenna felt her heart race, a hammer against her ribs, her mind scrambling for an escape route, a way out of the choking darkness closing in. The thing outside laughed again, a sound rich with malice, and each note clawed at the edges of her sanity. "Mommy, it's coming!" Hazel shrieked, pointing. But the girl's voice was drowned out by the furious pounding on the car. Jenna glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. The creature was no longer just a roaming shadow in the night. It had elongated into a writhing mass of twisted limbs and hollow eyes, each inch crawling closer as if the darkness was a living entity craving their fear. "Hold on, baby, just hold on." Jenna twisted the key again, desperation surging through her veins. But the engine didn't respond, only choking and sputtering as if echoing her own panic. She pounded the steering wheel, her breaths coming in short, panicked gasps, eyes flicking to the misty figures of the children who now surrounded them, faces blurred and deformed, lips stretching unnaturally wide. "Let's play forever," they sung, the sweet sing-song melody warping as it filled the car, growing louder, drowning out the sound of her own thoughts. Raw terror gripped her. Jenna turned to Hazel, whose wide eyes glimmered with unshed tears, reflecting their collective nightmare. "I can't let them take you," she whispered fiercely, squeezing her daughter's hand. "We'll find a way." But more cracks splintered through the glass, each one a reminder that time was running out. Jenna gripped the steering wheel tighter, every muscle in her body tense. Outside, the laughter echoed, an endless hollow sound that filled the empty spaces of her mind, each breath pulling her deeper into despair. "Mom, what are we going to do?" Hazel's voice trembled, the fragility of their situation seeping into everything. Taking a deep breath, Jenna dug her nails into her palms and made a decision. "We fight!" she yelled, determination igniting a flicker of hope within her. "We don't give up!" Just as she turned back to the door to open it and face whatever came next, the shadows darkened and crashed against the car. With a blinding flash of cold light, the image of a radiant figure began to materialize, glowing with an unsettling luminescence. It flickered for a moment, just long enough to steal her breath, and then, curiously, began pleading. "Jenna, you can't—" Before it could finish, the light flickered out, swallowed by the encroaching shadows. The creature screeched, an unholy sound that sent Jenna's heart racing anew, a primal reminder that they were still trapped. "Come on, come on!" She begged the car, wrenching the key again, desperation morphing into fury. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then roared to life, only to die again as the thing outside scrabbled for entrance, clawing at the sides, the laughter rising to a fever pitch. "Mommy!" Hazel cried, covering her ears, the noise penetrating even her fragile defenses. And then, almost as if responding to their resolve, the atmosphere shifted. The otherworldly laughter turned to a dreadful silence that enveloped them, a moment that stretched into infinity, leaving only the heavy thundering of their hearts. Suddenly, the children's faces emerged from the shadows, their features morphing, showing eerie smiles twisted with insidious glee. They began pressing their little hands against the glass, smudging pale fingers where the enchanting glow had once flickered. "Play with us, Mommy," they chorused, innocence perverted into something sinister and unimaginable. "No, stay back," Jenna shouted, her heart racing as the doors rattled violently, the shadows enveloping the car entirely. The air grew thick with whispers that buzzed in her ears, a cacophony of voices calling to her in a blend of chilling, honeyed tones. Then another crack, louder, sharper, ripping through the close air. This time, right in the center of the windshield, a tunnel of darkness split apart, revealing a void beyond the glass, pulling at her mind like a siren's voice through the fog. "Mommy," Hazel whimpered, trembling in the seat beside her. "What's happening?" Jenna turned, wide-eyed with terror. "I don't know, but we have to get out. Now!" Heart pounding, she threw the gear into reverse, praying it would move them away from the shadows closing in. But just as they began to back away, a wave of darkness surged forward like ink in water, pulling at everything around them. The children's faces contorted, fleeting but vicious, inching closer, whispering in a language of fear that wrapped around her like chains. "Run, Mommy!" Hazel screamed. But Jenna's body refused to obey, rooted by paralyzing terror as the darkness pressed in like a relentless storm. Just as she braced herself for battle, the night erupted with a shriek, the laughter slicing through the air like glass, exposing an absolute horror that Jenna had never known. The darkness was infinite. It was hunger. It wanted them. And everything she thought she knew about protecting her daughter shattered. With one last glance back at the ghastly figures, Jenna steeled herself, realizing that the escape wasn't just outside. It lay within themselves. They would either conquer the shadows together or be consumed. "Mom, look!" Hazel yelled, eyes wide. "It's coming in!" And in that terrible moment, Jenna had to face reality. How far would she go to save her child from the darkness that had been unleashed? And what blood price would it demand? In the depths of her soul, a resolve sparked. They had battled before, but this time they had to confront the very essence of fear itself. And Jenna felt that this horrifying dance with the darkness was just beginning. What would it take to push them past the brink? Would they survive long enough to find out? The shadows pressed against the car like a living entity, squeezing Jenna and Hazel into a shrinking world of terror. Jenna's pulse thundered in her ears as the creature clawed at the exterior, the metallic screech of nails raking against the surface sending cold waves down her spine. The laughter had died, replaced by a heavy breathing, deep and resonant like a nightmare welling up from the darkness itself. "Mommy, I'm scared." Hazel's voice trembled, cutting through the oppressive silence that followed. Her small fingers gripped the edge of the seat, eyes darting toward the windows. "Me too, sweetie, but we have to stay strong. We'll make it out of this." Jenna forced a smile, but she felt the weight of 1,000 horrors bearing down. Then, without warning, the shadow surged forward. A clawed limb shattered the window near the passenger side, shards exploding into the vehicle like shrapnel. Panic seized her as glass cut through the air, glinting ominously in the dim light. "Get down!" she shouted instinctively, flinging her hands over Hazel's head. The darkness poured in, creeping through the jagged opening, seeping into their sanctuary, thick like smoke, chilling every ounce of warmth from the car. Hazel screamed, the piercing sound merging with the chorus of whispers, rising and falling like a sickly chant. "No! No!" Jenna kept her voice steady, forcing her feet to move despite the horror invading their haven. She grasped the gear shift, a frantic determination gripping her heart. "This can't be how it ends." Jenna slammed the car into drive, heart racing, thrumming in time with the chaos around them. The engine roared, seemingly emboldened by her resolve. She pressed down on the gas, aiming for the sliver of daylight in front of them. The tires screeched as they lurched forward, and the car jolted out of its frantic stillness. "Wait, Mommy!" Hazel pulled at her arm, terror-stricken. "They're coming!" A look in the rearview mirror sent ice coursing through Jenna's veins. Shadows twisted and surged after them, a ravenous horde of deformed children, faces melting into an array of vices and distorted smiles. Jenna felt bile rise in her throat, every instinct screaming for her to escape. "Hold on," she shouted, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The car rocketed towards the dark expanse of the road ahead, but the shadows didn't relent. They clawed, biting at the metal, fingers curling into the spaces where flesh was supposed to be. "Mommy!" Hazel's voice cracked, her little frame trembling in the seat. "Make them stop!" "I'm trying," Jenna cried, a swell of desperation threatening to drown her. What could she do against the essence of darkness? The creature outside shifted and elongated, a dark mass that swallowed the horizon. Just then, as if fate itself had twisted in response to her defiance, Jenna saw it. A flicker among the shadows, a glimmer of light ahead, flickering in the far distance. Her heart leaped. "There! We can make it!" With renewed fury, she pressed the gas pedal to the floor, the engine screaming in protest. The shadows clawed closer, nearly suffocating her and Hazel in their proximity, now too familiar, too menacing. "Faster, Mommy," Hazel urged, her tiny voice filled with wild hope. "We can reach the light. Just hold on!" The tires screamed against the asphalt, the world blurring around them into a whirl of darkness and dread, the light flickering ahead like an impromptu beacon. But shadows twisted, pulling them backward. Pulling, screams turned into whispers, and whispers into deafening shouts inside her skull. The weight of fear pressed hard against her chest as the touch of the darkness slipped through the shattered glass, cold and grasping. "Mommy." Hazel's voice faded, replaced by that sickly sweet chant of childlike laughter morphing into something sinister. Jenna felt her grip slipping from the wheel as a low growl, deep and vile, emanated from within the shadows. They were consuming her hope, consuming her resolve, wrapping around their fragile lives. Just as Jenna felt she would be lost forever, the headlights from the other side illuminated the night, cutting through the darkness. "God, no!" But it was too late. The light flashed across the creature's grotesque visage as it surged toward them, and Jenna screamed, "Hazel!" The world erupted into chaos once more, plunging into the light, what awaited them on the other side. And would she be able to reach her daughter before it was all extinguished? As the shadows pulled back, a new uncertainty hung in the air, rustling Jenna's resolve. Had they truly escaped, or was this merely the beginning of a far more insidious nightmare waiting to unfold? Jenna's heart raced as she plunged through the light, a piercing clarity flooding her senses. The blinding brilliance enveloped them, pushing against the darkness that writhed like a wounded beast behind. She squeezed the wheel with a fierce grip, fear mingling with fierce determination as they surged into the unknown. The world around them transformed, colors bleeding back into focus like the dawn after a long night. Her car screeched forward, tearing down a quiet street blanketed in an unsettling stillness. The shadows appeared to halt just beyond the edge of the light, twisting and convulsing, as if unsure whether to retreat or pursue. "Mommy, where are we?" Hazel's voice broke the spell, innocent curiosity laced with fatigue. Jenna turned her head for just a moment, searching her daughter's face. "I think we're safe, for now." But her voice held a tremor that betrayed the reality. Safety felt like a fading illusion, a whisper chasing the wind. Jenna's hands shook as she released her grip on the wheel. Memory flashed in her mind, the haunting laughter, the warped faces, the immense dread that had sat heavy on her chest like a lead weight. She swallowed hard, refusing to let the darkness seep back in. "We have to keep moving," she reminded herself, forcing her mind to focus. She was so close, she thought, her stomach twisting with the sharp pang of loss as she remembered the boy from the shed. A warning etched into her memory. What did they want? She pressed the accelerator. "Keep your eyes open, Hazy. If we stay alert, we'll make it out." But as she glanced into the rearview mirror, the sight sent a chill down her spine. The twilight shadows were fading, but the memory of their spectral forms threatened to latch onto her thoughts like tenacious barnacles. Hazel's tiny voice broke through Jenna's haze. "Mommy, what if they come back? What if they find us?" Jenna took a deep breath, willing herself to hide her fear. "We're different now. We're stronger. We won't go back." Her fear had transformed into courage, the raw drive to protect her child sparking a fire inside her. Every second was a battle, shadows still licking at the edges of her mind, yet the grasp of dread began to loosen. They emerged onto a main road, the familiar sights of Maplewood brushing against Jenna's vision like a haunting reminder of what had just transpired. She could sense the weight of the town, the homes around her, so reminiscent of warmth, now felt tainted by lingering darkness. Driven by instinct, she turned toward the diner, a sanctuary rooted in familiarity, the rhythms of life echoing against the walls. "It'll be safe there," she assured Hazel, who remained small and quiet beside her. Yet as they approached the diner, Jenna noticed something. Figures loitered in the lot, children, eerily still, their faces obscured by shadows. "That's not right," she muttered, dread pooling in her stomach as she squinted to see. "Mommy, I don't like this," Hazel whimpered, clutching her stuffed bunny to her chest. Jenna slammed the brakes, the tires screeching as they skidded to a stop. The figures turned their heads simultaneously, eyes dark and flickering with an unnatural hunger, catching the waning light like empty shells. Memories flooded Jenna's mind, a realization sparking within her. She could see now that their earlier horrors, a mirror of the town's hidden secrets. The children's laughter, their voices now warped echoes, seemed to call out to her even from this distance. "What happened to them?" she whispered, heart clenching. What cost had the darkness exacted on their souls? But Hazel's soft voice tugged her back. "Can we go home? I don't want to play anymore." "Let's get out of here," Jenna said fiercely, determined to shield her daughter from the insidious echoes of the past. She threw the gear into reverse, heart pounding in her ears as the figures began to advance, their smiles grotesque and ghastly. Just as they turned, the shimmering light flickered again, emerald glinting through it, like sunlight on a rippling stream. It caught her breath, and with it, a whisper of a memory danced through her mind. The boy in the shed. "No!" Jenna cried suddenly, realizing what was happening. Their fear was feeding the darkness, keeping it alive. "We're done being afraid." She pressed the accelerator down again, the engine roaring defiantly as she tore past the looming specters, pushing deeper into the heart of Maplewood. The shadows shrieked in dismay, a chorus of voices merging into one deafening cacophony. The night pulsed around them, but Jenna and Hazel were lighter now, leaping through the veil that had once tethered them to despair. The strength of connection yanked them forward. They clung to each other, hearts pounding in tandem with the reverberating bellow of their fear. As Jenna drove toward the diner, she felt a wave of empowerment. "We are more than this fear," she whispered resolutely. "No more games, no more shadows." The diner stood as a beacon, welcoming and bright, a sanctuary infused with whispered assurances of safety. As the familiar neon lights bathed the exterior in warmth, Jenna felt a rush of hope, a promise of light breaking wide open. "Mommy, look!" Hazel shouted, pointing at a reflection in the windows. No longer the twisted creatures. Instead, they became merely children again, their giggles echoing like the sweet sound of innocence renewed. Jenna took a long, cleansing breath, fear evaporating like morning dew warming in the sun. Inside the diner, the worn booth waited, filled with the scent of vanilla and fried food. She felt alive, and the feeling echoed back through the open doors and danced around them. The whispers became less insistent, less hungry. "Can we stay here forever?" Hazel asked, her innocent voice painting images of safety against the backdrop of shadows that had long haunted them. "Yes. Let's stay right here," Jenna replied, squeezing her daughter's hand. The shadows had receded, and now the night felt like it could finally breathe again. Maybe they'd come back if they dared. But tonight, in the safety of the diner, Jenna found solace. In facing the darkness, they'd emerged into the light, reclaiming their space, hope flickering brightly between them. Just then Jenna felt a quiet resolve settle within her, a promise kept. They would face whatever came next, together, stronger, resolute. In Maplewood, maybe, just maybe, they had helped find freedom again. And as she leaned in, Hazel snuggled close, safe within their embrace. Jenna smiled, knowing the true fight against the darkness was finally won. "Now, let's eat some pie," she said, letting the warmth wrap around them both like an embrace. Yet in the back of her mind she couldn't shake the thought. For every shadow that surrendered, another could rise to take its place. But tonight they could rest, encased in light, laughter, and the promise of another day where bravery outweighed fear. And so they began their new chapter in Maplewood, together in the light, for as long as it would last. If you loved this conclusion and want to experience more exclusive stories like this, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button to boost this content, and let's feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your thoughts and reactions. What did you think of the ending? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see it. Show your support and keep connected for more thrilling tales.